The purpose of this video is hopefully to give you some ideas about how to arrange students during tiered work. I only hesitate to broach this topic because I know the physical classroom struggle is real as a secondary teacher. There are a lot of innovations going on right now with different shaped desks, different types of flexible seating arrangements. That's awesome. Personally, I've been teaching for about 3 years students who are sitting in desks that are still attached to the chairs, like 1950s, 1960s style. So we're pretty much restricted to rows if I have more than like 24 to 26 students. So I definitely get any consternation coming from teachers at this point. The thing is, I do think it's important to get some creative juices flowing, especially for us secondary teachers who have larger students, smaller classrooms, and the kids all carry backpacks. At most schools, in my experience, all my students have carried backpacks. I've structured this video so hopefully I can put a more positive spin on the barriers you may perceive to arranging your classroom for tiered work. I know there are barriers. I acknowledge there are also barriers that I haven't even thought of. But I'm going to share what has worked for me, and hopefully some of my experiences can inspire your own practices. Because Tier 1 and Tier 2 students must generally work without you while you're remediating or intervening with Group 3, they may need to reach out to each other in their tier group while they're completing a learning task. This is made easier by grouping students, or at least arranging them in close proximity to each other. The thing is, I especially don't enjoy having my students in groups to start the school year, as it is a distracting way to instruct them. That is, until we've settled into routines and my expectations have been made clear. I really don't like students in groups of 4 or 5, for example. Some might say, okay, then let's just have students put the desks into groups for RTI. Every day we have RTI scheduled. The thing is, if you're a teacher, you might know what it's like to watch students attempt to put desks in any type of new configuration. Despite their best efforts, sometimes it's too many cooks in the kitchen, or not enough students helping out. Kids are already sitting in the desks. They don't really care how they're arranged, whatever. You could draw it for them. I've displayed it on the smartboard for them. I've labeled the floor for them, but it sort of just ends up in chaos, and more than the normal, organized chaos of a learning environment. You could get all Ron Clark on the class and make the students put the desks into formation and back again quickly, making this something you practice with your students at the beginning of each year. While I do agree with this essential aspect of Clark's list of 55 for educators, as pertaining to most routines, the thing is, this is one I just cannot get a good grasp on. I feel crunched for time when we try to do this in a 47-minute period anyway, even when students were at their best. I also always feel very bad for the person under my classroom, even if they're super cool about it. And I'm just stubborn enough to get creative and see how I can work around these barriers in my mind. So I'll show you a couple configurations and explain how I communicate the seating to students when we're about to complete tiered work. This arrangement in particular is better if you have a smaller number of students, but I have made it work for 30 to 33 students. It just depends on what your classroom is configured as. I have done this L arrangement, as I like to call it. I've also added a table in, and the students are aware that the table might sometimes be used for tiered work. This works for if I have to lecture or give instructions. All the students can relatively face forward, and then I'm able to kind of grasp their attention without them being distracted in like the pods of 4 or 5, which students struggle with behaviorally. The green here would be Tier 2 students, as they're generally the larger group. I would have the blue be Tier 3, and then I would have Tier 1 be in the red here. If I needed to borrow a desk from these group of 6, if I only have 5 Tier 1 students, then I would slide one over potentially to join the blue group. The asymmetry of this one actually messes with some people at first, but it works well for me because students can sit in the regular seating chart at the start of class. And then when it's time for tiered work, I show students a list of what color group they're in. The students are responsible for remembering that. And then I switch to the next slide and I display these color-coded seats. Not only do they need to, they only actually need to physically move themselves, not the desks at that point. So it does work out the way that I like it. This arrangement also allows sort of for freedom for students. So you kind of make them think that they have a choice in the matter. I just tell green students that they can sit in any green seat, red students can sit in any red seat, and then blue students can sit in any blue seat. Sometimes the green gets a little bit chaotic. So I might have this group here be green and then this group here be yellow. And then the students can still be tier 2 in green or yellow, but I can manage behavior better by separating some of those students that shouldn't actually be together. This particular arrangement is super traditional because it's rows of students, but it serves the same purpose of preserving the lecture space as well as giving students at least one person to collaborate with. You could also have these 4 desks. You could have the students put together these 4 desks just to have more of a sense of collaboration if they need to talk to another person besides their shoulder partner. It also gives freedom of seat choice, and I like this arrangement because I personally think this does accommodate more students. And I know we're really battling class sizes and it's really difficult, but class sizes as a reality are 30. That's really where we're at. The teachers should also consider in both of these arrangements, keeping themselves sort of in the front here, hovering around the front of this group, never really turning their back on the red or green students as they're helping the blue students. So this also helps with both of those arrangements. Despite all that information, you probably can still think of at least 3 barriers to making your personal physical classroom environment conducive to working in tiered groups. The thing is, there are options. The more you think of new ways to get creative with your classroom space, the more ideas will flow. That goes for many aspects of this RTI spiel. I also suggest visiting other classrooms and collaborating with your colleagues. Not only will you find inspiration, but you may find that your librarians are open to housing students, and then your colleagues may actually allow students to use their rooms during their prep time, or what have you. If you have a co-teacher, that's also works out really well because your co-teacher can pull students to another place. This might open up a quid pro quo situation, just as a side note. So be willing to work with your teammates and collaborate with them and just, keep the peace if you need to. I've also experienced success putting a trusted tier 1 group just outside my room in the hallway. If they're able to live up to the high expectations I have, I really have a problem disrupting other classrooms. It makes me feel anxious. So if I do that, then I end up putting the tier 3 group closest to the door inside the classroom. I have the tier 1 group or some of them in the hallway, and then the tier 2 students are in the rest of the classroom space. I could stand sort of in the doorway closer to the tier 3 group, pop my head out to check on the tier 1 group, and deal with any shenanigans as appropriate. So I also have, if you did not see that section about how to manage the classroom during these tiered times, because it is just sort of a habit you need to get yourself into. So hopefully you could check that out if you haven't already. And ultimately, I really hope that you get something out of this video that can inspire you to help your students learn in a tiered environment without making you pull your hair out with stress.